My name is Hannah Cole. I'm 31 years old, and if you asked anyone in my small Ohio neighborhood, they'd say I'm the kind of mom who does everything for her kid. My son Liam just turned 6. He's my whole world. My miracle baby after 2 miscarriages and years of praying I'd get to be someone's mom. So when his birthday rolled around this year, I wanted it to be perfect. I spent weeks planning a little party at our house. Balloons, homemade cupcakes, his favorite dinosaur cake, and every kid from his kindergarten class. I even stayed up until 2 in the morning stringing up decorations just so he'd wake up smiling. By noon, our living room was full of laughter, the smell of pizza, and kids running around with party hats. Then my in-laws arrived, Mark and Susan Miller. They're my husband's parents, and they've never exactly hidden their dislike for me. I told myself, it's just for a couple of hours. Smile and keep the peace. When it came time for presents, Liam was practically bouncing off the walls. One by one, he tore through toys, books, a new bike from me and my husband. Then came his grandparents' gift. Susan handed Liam a small box with a strange little smirk. Go ahead, sweetheart, open it. Inside was a sleek white box, a DNA kit. And Susan said, loud enough for everyone to hear, just to be sure he's really one of us. The room went silent. My chest felt like it was on fire. My son just looked confused. And my husband? He said nothing. In that moment, I knew something inside me had snapped. As I stood there holding back tears at Liam's party, all I could think was, why does this feel so familiar? Because it was. I grew up in a house where doubt and criticism were served with breakfast. My parents, Ellen and Robert Cole, were not bad people, but love from them always felt like something I had to earn. I had one older sister, Madison, who could do no wrong. Straight A student, cheer captain, perfect smile, my parents' pride and joy. And me? I was the difficult one, the one who talked back, the one who didn't like ballet, the one who struggled with math. I can still hear my mom's voice, sharp as a knife. Madison never gives us trouble. Why can't you be more like her? Or my dad's sigh whenever I brought home a report card with anything less than a B. Birthdays weren't big in our house. At least, not for me. Madison got parties, new dresses, a crowd of relatives. My birthdays were quiet dinners, sometimes even forgotten if my dad was working late. By the time I was 12, I stopped expecting cake altogether. That's probably why I go overboard for Liam now. I swore to myself that my child would never wonder if he was loved, never have to question if he mattered. But growing up in that environment taught me something dangerous. That love has to be proven. That if people don't trust you, maybe you just have to try harder until they do. So when I married Ethan Miller, I thought I was ready for a family of my own. But his parents, Mark and Susan, felt so much like my own, judgmental, cold, always questioning me, my choices, my parenting. And like a fool, I kept thinking that if I cooked better dinners, kept the house spotless, hosted holidays, they'd eventually accept me. But standing there with that DNA kit in my hand, I realized maybe nothing I did was ever going to be enough for them. When Ethan and I first got married, I was determined to be the kind of wife and mom that no one could criticize. I worked part-time as a graphic designer and still managed to cook dinner every night, pack Ethan's lunches, and plan every detail of our weekends. When Liam was born, my whole world shifted. Sleepless nights, postpartum anxiety, none of it mattered because he was here. I nursed him every 2 hours, cried silently in the bathroom when it got too hard, and still kept the house spotless so Susan wouldn't have anything to comment on when she visited. But no matter how hard I worked, Susan always found something wrong. She's spoiling him. She's feeding him the wrong formula. She lets him watch too much TV. It was endless. One Thanksgiving, I spent 3 days cooking everything from scratch: turkey, pies, fresh rolls, the works. Susan took one bite of the stuffing and said, "Not as good as mine, but nice try." Ethan just kept his head down, never defending me, and then came the comments about Liam. "He doesn't look much like Ethan, does he? Are you sure you wrote his name on the birth certificate right? We wouldn't want any confusion." I laughed it off at first, but inside it hurt. I knew what they were really saying, that maybe he wasn't theirs, that maybe I wasn't trustworthy enough to be part of their family. Every visit turned into a silent performance. I'd dress Liam in outfits Susan liked, cook meals I knew Mark preferred, and smile even when they criticized me. I kept telling myself that one day they'd see how hard I was trying, that one day they'd love me the way they claimed to love Liam. But that day never came. By the time Liam's 6th birthday rolled around, I was exhausted. I told myself this party would finally prove I was good enough, that they'd see the happy, perfect family we'd built. But when Susan placed that DNA kit in front of my son, all I could think was, this is it. This is the moment I stop begging for their approval. The room was completely silent except for the sound of kids' balloons squeaking on the floor. I stared at the little white box in Liam's hands, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. Liam tilted his head, confused. "What is it, Mommy?" he asked. Before I could answer, Susan laughed softly. "It's a DNA kit, sweetheart. We just thought it might be fun. You know, to make sure you're really part of the family." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I looked at Ethan, waiting for him to say something, anything, to defend me, to defend us. But he just stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes on the floor. That silence said everything. My cheeks burned with humiliation. The other parents exchanged awkward glances, one of them pulling their child a little closer. Even Liam looked uneasy, as if he had done something wrong. Something inside me snapped. I gently took the box out of Liam's hands, placed it back on the table, and said as calmly as I could, "Party's over." I could feel Susan's smirk fading as I gathered Liam's coat and shoes. Ethan mumbled, "Hannah, maybe we can talk about this." But I cut him off. "No, not here. Not ever like this again." I scooped Liam up, holding him so tight he buried his face into my shoulder, and I walked straight out the front door. The laughter and noise behind me went silent. The only sound was the door slamming shut, the echo of it ringing in my ears like a final goodbye. As I buckled Liam into his car seat, tears streamed down my face, not just from humiliation, but from the realization that I couldn't keep living like this. That moment, I knew I was done begging for their acceptance. That night, after Liam was asleep, I sat in the kitchen staring at the DNA kit still sitting in my purse. My hands shook as I threw it into the trash. I kept thinking about Liam, about how one day he might understand what happened, how one day he might look back and remember that no one defended his mom. And I refused to let him grow up thinking that kind of treatment was normal. So I made a decision. The next morning, I called my boss and told her I was taking an indefinite leave. I sold the extra furniture we didn't need, packed what little I could into my car, and quietly rented a small 2-bedroom apartment in a nearby town. When Ethan came home from work, I told him flat out, "Liam and I are leaving. We need space. You can visit him if you want, but we're not living like this anymore." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. "You're overreacting, Hannah." It was a joke. "No," I said firmly, my voice steadier than I expected. It was the last straw. The next day, Liam and I moved. It wasn't glamorous. Our new apartment had peeling paint and a view of the parking lot, but it was ours. It was quiet, safe. I picked up small freelance design jobs online, just enough to cover rent and groceries. Slowly, I started building a new routine, walking Liam to a nearby park, baking muffins together on weekends, filling our space with laughter instead of criticism. For the first time in years, I could breathe. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried into my pillow, nights I wondered if I was ruining Liam's life by taking him away from his father's family. But then I'd hear him giggling as we built blanket forts in the living room, or see him running free at the park, no longer nervous around anyone, and I knew I had made the right choice. I started therapy. I joined a local moms group. I even made a couple of friends, real ones, who didn't make me feel like I had to earn their approval. Piece by piece, I was becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone who didn't need Susan's smirk or Mark's opinion to know she was a good mother. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. It took about 2 weeks before the calls started. At first, they were just from Ethan. Quick voicemails. Hannah, can we talk? Liam misses me. Then came the texts. You can't just run away every time you're upset. And eventually, the guilt trips. Do you really think it's good for Liam to grow up without his father's side of the family? I stayed firm. Then Susan started calling. Not to apologize, oh no, but to remind me what a mistake I was making. You're ruining our family, Hannah. All because of a silly joke, a joke. That's what she called humiliating me in front of my child and his friends. When I blocked her number, the Facebook posts started. Long, dramatic rants about ungrateful daughters-in-law who take children away from loving grandparents. Friends and neighbors started asking questions, and I hated that it made me doubt myself all over again. One day, Ethan showed up at my apartment unannounced. Liam was at school, so it was just the two of us. He looked tired, worn down. My mom is really sick, he said quietly. I stared at him. She's in the hospital? He hesitated. No, but she's not sleeping. She's stressed. I cut him off. Ethan, I'm done. I am not coming back just because your mom is losing sleep. He didn't fight me. He just looked at me with a mix of anger and resignation. You've changed, he said finally. Yes, I replied. I had to. After he left, I sat on the couch for a long time, staring at the wall. The old me would have caved. The old me would have packed up, gone back, and begged for scraps of kindness. But this new me, I was finally strong enough to say no. Not just for me, but for Liam. It's been 6 months since Liam's birthday. 6 months since I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Life isn't perfect, but it's peaceful. Liam has adjusted better than I could have imagined. He's thriving at his new school. He laughs louder now, sleeps better. Sometimes he even says, Mommy, I like our new home. It feels happy here. That's when I know I did the right thing. I still hear from Ethan occasionally, mostly short updates, asking to see Liam on weekends, and I let them see each other, but on my terms. No Susan, no Mark. Not until they can treat us both with respect. Some nights, I sit on the balcony after Liam's asleep and think about how terrified I was the day I left, how sure I was that I was ruining everything. But walking away didn't ruin my life. It saved it. I used to think leaving meant failure. That family was something you had to fight for no matter what it cost you. But I've learned something important. Family isn't proven by DNA tests. It's proven by love, by the way they protect you, by the way they make you feel safe. I chose to protect my son. I chose to protect myself. And if anyone out there needs to hear this, you're allowed to do the same. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. I don't know what the future holds for Ethan and me, or for his parents and Liam. But I do know this. The cycle of doubt and humiliation ends with me. And for the first time in my life, I finally feel free.